Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Soul Empowerment. My name is David McLeod. I am your life mastery coach. And today we're going to have a really interesting conversation about the mystery of love. You've heard us talk in several episodes, I'm sure, recently. One in particular we called What Would Love Do Now? And then last month we did another episode called Embracing Self-Love. And, one of the questions that came up for us during our conversation is, well, what do we really mean when we talk about love? What is it? Is it an emotion? Is it a state of being? What exactly is it? And we thought it'd be fun to have a conversation about that, just to see if we could shed some light on this wonderful and beautiful and delightful mystery that we all experience through our lives. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, and I hope you're going to enjoy this conversation. So I'm going to invite my co-panelists to introduce themselves. And today, Sarah, I'm going to start with you.
Thank you, David. Okay, I'm Sarah, or Sarah Jane, take your pick. And I'm in the UK. I work with energy healing, and one of those is Reiki, the universal healing energy. And for me, the universal healing energy is love. And it's the greatest healer. So this is going to be a fascinating topic, and I love working with the energy of Reiki, with the energy of sound, toning, and working with individuals and seeing the change in them, a lightness after a session. And that's all down to the energy of love that is offered to them. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation because I've been thinking about, well, what the heck is love anyway? So let's see where it takes us.
Yeah, right. Thank you. Yeah, that's beautiful. And next up today will be Gail.
Thank you, David. Hello, everyone. I'm Gail Nowak. I'm out of Boston, Massachusetts, and I am passionate about developing authentic, clear communication and energetically aligned leadership in businesses focused on creating a better world. My magic is guiding new earth leaders, in other words, coaches, healers, and entrepreneurs who are heart and spirit led, to center love in your work, life, and leadership so that you can transform your presence and impact. So I am super excited about this conversation today as well. And in full transparency, a little nervous because, like you, Sarah, I was like, how are we going to really capture the essence of love and answer this question? Because it feels so expansive to me. And everybody's had a different experience with love. So I'm super curious to see where the conversation goes today.
Beautiful. Thank you, Gail. And of course, by no means last but no means least today, please introduce yourself, Scott.
Scott Holm, Reiki Master here in Boston, Massachusetts. And much like Sarah, Reiki for me has always been love, and how it should, I see it is in purest white crystalline light when I'm working with clients, and how it manifests in the heart space, and how expansive it actually is in almost everyone, and the ability to see it, feel it, understand it, have it in their life comes from here. So for all of you out there, you have the Love Doctors. We are here to bring love to you.
I'm going to have to get that domain name. Unless you beat me to it, Scott. Yeah, that sounds great. You mentioned the colors, and it's funny. I was thinking about that this morning, and the colors of the chakras, right, going from lowest to highest, is red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. So that's why I picked this shirt, because we're to me, what we're talking about is elevating consciousness to that point where all we experience is unconditional love. And I mean, what's interesting to me is the phrase unconditional love is kind of redundant when you think about it, because in actual fact, love by its very nature is unconditional. The only reason we even use the phrase unconditional love is because most of us experience love from the space of the ego mind, where often we're using love as a weapon. We're using it as a manipulative tool. You know, if you don't do what I want you to do, then I'm going to withhold my love from you. And how many people have had that kind of experience with parents who are just trying to control their kids? You know, so there's a lot of meat here for us to cover. And I suppose, you know, we can start with the difference between romantic love and actual, real, you know, universal kind of love. Maybe that's a place to start. But I'm not going to necessarily start there. Where do you guys want to start?
That was exactly where I wanted to start. Because for me, obviously, sort of, yes, my experiences, etc. But for me, it was almost, love is about a relationship. Romance love wasn't necessarily, I suppose, I'm not saying my parents never said they love me. My grandparents never said it. It's a negative place I was in. If they did, I didn't hear it or I didn't believe it. But love was about having that relationship, getting married. And it wasn't about the everyday. For me, the more I think about it, in a conversation with my younger sister, and it was just like, we're not too sure what love is. And I just said, well, actually, isn't caring another name for love? Because when we really care for somebody, we're actually loving them. But it's the love in the broadest sense of the word, not this way of people thinking, oh, love has to do, oh, if somebody says they love me, that means they've got to want a relationship with me or whatever. And love isn't about that. That should almost be called something else, so that the true meaning of love, the full meaning of love, that's my feeling, is that love isn't about relationships or romance, etc. It is, but it isn't. It's so much bigger than that. It's the caring, the thought, the consideration, and every other term that you can think of that is thoughtful and caring of ourselves and of each other.
Right. Thank you. And what do you, Gail and Scott, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I remember, I can resonate with Sarah's saying. I can remember in my younger years, like, just being desperate to feel loved and literally looking for love in all the wrong places through, you know, romantic relationships, starting in middle school and going all the way up through young adulthood. And yeah, it was definitely that was not love, but it's what I thought was love, because I didn't really have a clear model of what love looked like, you know, and I was coming from a very wounded place. I'm glad that I've had the fortune of meeting a lot of really supportive and loving people along the way, along that journey. Some of them were in the guise of tough love, and that's still love, who really kind of woke me up. Some of them were maybe didn't even look like love, but I can look back on it now and connect to that unconditional universal love, David, that you were speaking about. And I really believe, you know, I talk about this a lot in my workshops and my content and my work with clients, is that divine love is happening for us. Everything is happening for us. And so even when we have these difficult situations or difficult people in our experience, it's happening from a place, I believe it's happening from a place of love, and it's happening for our benefit. Even though it doesn't always feel that way when it's happening. So it's definitely been love, and the experience of love has definitely been a journey from there's something lacking in me, and there's this void that I want to fill, versus being able to source and resource that for myself and to be present and be in the world from the overflow of that. And to me, that's a part of love. And also I would say, I woke up this morning and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to answer this question. But the phrase that kept coming to me is do no harm and take no BS. I feel like that's a really good summary of how we can be present with ourselves, with each other, in that energy of love.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
Hmm.
Scott.
Thought a lot about this, and I was going back to when I was a teenager, and I thought, what is love? And so, as a teenager, love is physical. It's that attraction. It's that brain candy. That, oh, Cindy Lou, wow, I think she really likes me. Later teenage years, when you start finding out what the physicality of love is, and you think that's love, and realize not so much. Get older, and your what you think love is has been kind of drawn for you, whether it's being from your family, um, from friends, from your just the back and forth through high school and college, and as you get in, and how you define it. I've talked to many clients, and some of them don't really know what unconditional love is, because love always had strings. Love always had those strings, and people would pull them in order. If you love me, you'll X. If you love me, you'll do this. And it took a long time to understand. And it brought up the question of, how is love shown in your life, to you and from you? My mom taught me about caregiving. My mom was the ultimate caregiver. She stayed home. She had 4 kids. She painted the inside of the house. She did all the laundry. She did all the cooking. She did all the stuff on the outside. My father went to work and he came home. My mother did absolutely everything else, raising the kids and everything else. And that's what she taught me, that how she expressed her caring, her love, how she expressed for her family was that making sure everybody was okay. So as I grew up through my life, that's what I thought love was kind of emptying your bowl, emptying your soul out and giving it to everybody, and hoping that it kind of came back. And so how is it shown? For me, after in this part of my life, as David, we talk about elder wisdom, right? Is that in order for me to give love, I have to have a love for myself. I truly have to understand who I am. I truly have to have this energy right here, where my soul exists, where my heart space exists, and be as pure as it possibly can. Because if it's not pure, it's not unconditional love. Everybody loves, I see cats and dogs, and they're being pushed in strollers, and they're being spent thousands and thousands of dollars because people are saying, this is the only place I have unconditional love. I'm going to make sure they're as good as possible. And they're caregiving of their animals because it's unconditional love, because they've never had it in other aspects of their life. And because I've asked people about that, it's like, oh, the most important thing is my dog and my cat or whatever. Because that's the only source of unconditional love they have. So how do we find that aspect? How do we find that aspect in our life? How do we get that without all the strings that seem to be attached to the word love?
Right. It's interesting that we've kind of hit on all of the major cylinders that I was expecting us to hit on as we begin this conversation. I think for most of us, we think of love as, well, sex. That's kind of what we think about. If I'm feeling loving, then I'm going to have sex, but that's really not love. We know that now. And that's something that we have to maybe experience for ourselves and come to a realization that sex is just one of the many different ways that love can be expressed. You know, I think, and I think you were talking about this, Scott, with the idea of strings being attached, and I'm reminded of something that Neil Donald Walsh said in his book Conversations with God. And I don't remember which volume it was, but I do remember it was God talking and God saying, you people don't really love each other. What you really say to each other is, I trade you very much. In other words, I'll give you something in exchange for something that I want. That's kind of how we humans tend to treat love. And this is the conditional form of love that we've been talking about. But when we get to a place of understanding the real true nature of love and the value of sharing it without strings, then we have no desire for anything to be returned. We allow for that possibility to happen, but we don't have a requirement for that to happen. And you know, the other thing, I think I mentioned this when we talked about embracing self-love. One of my shadow facilitation instructors had this phrase that he used to talk about, and I don't remember the words exactly, but he says, you may love in a dysfunctional way, or you may love in a healthy way, but love you will, because love you are.
Mhm.
And that's always stuck with me. So love is our true essence. Love is what we really are. And this is why we want to care for people. This is why we want to share our gifts with people. This is why we do what we do, because we are motivated at the deepest level of our true essence by a desire to give or receive love. And more often than not, it's about giving. That's what we think. And sometimes it looks, like you said, Gail, from the outside, it might look like a mess. It might look like a dysfunctional thing. But that doesn't change the fact that the person doing the giving of that love is doing it from his or her own belief of what love really is. You know? So can we find a way to enjoy all aspects of our lives from a place of love without requiring anything in return? That's kind of where I think we're going with this. Does that resonate for you folks?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel I'm getting the nudge to share this. And I know I've shared it in other episodes, but I feel like, 2023 was a big breakthrough in love for me. Some of you know my mom was really sick and was at the end of her life, and ultimately she passed away in August. And it was really challenging to number one, hold boundaries and be loving of myself in that process of walking by her side in her end of life. We had been estranged for several years. She was very much, even at the end, still in denial about the abuse and the dysfunction and the neglect. In growing up, I mean, she even, made some decisions and had some conversations without my consent, and did some really kind of messed up stuff on Mother's Day from the hospital, and ambushed me with that. And it would have been really easy for me to be, and trust me, I had my time of being really pissed and self-righteous, and I really had to sit with, how do I want the rest of this time with my mother to look like? How do I want to feel about how I show up to this? And how can I look for, I was having that question of what would love do? I think we had recently had that episode too. How do I find the love in this anyway? And what would love do in this situation anyway? And it was not an easy choice. and being on the other side of it, of I was hurt and I had to tend to those wounds, and I had to let go of like that final hope that she was going to take responsibility and, you know, be the mom that I really needed and wanted her to be, to just let that go and just be present with her and to enjoy every moment with her, even when it was uncomfortable. To me, that is love. In a way where I didn't feel like I was being, you know, I didn't, like I said, do no harm, take no bull. You know, for definitely needed firm boundaries. I definitely needed to be clear about what am I available for? What am I not available for? It's not okay with me to talk to me that way and do those things. And I let her know that. And I walked away from that experience feeling at peace and resolved, even though it did not go the way I had imagined it going in all the previous years. And I can honestly say, like, I feel her love. It's pure, it's clean. Now that she's passed on, I feel her. I feel her every day. And it was really hard to access that um, in her defensiveness and in my wounding and all of that. But that to me, that was hard. That was really hard to be in that place. And it was a massive breakthrough of this is what love can look like, even when you're dealing with abusive people, even when you're dealing with nasty people, even when you're dealing with toxic people. You can stand strong in love and know that underneath all of that, within them, just like you were saying, David and Sarah and Scott, like, we are love at our core.
You know, I don't know if I've shared this on this program or not, but you know, when you talk about your mother and how you were at least able to have a closure with her while she was still alive. My own mother passed in 1992, and she was only 62 years old at the time. And the circumstances of her death were really kind of, well, like they were screwed up, you know. She had discovered 3 years earlier that she had a lump in her breast. She had decided that she was not going to tell anybody about it, and she swore my stepfather to secrecy. And she just decided to do her own thing, you know, like naturopathic stuff and diet and all that, which nothing wrong with that. But it wasn't until, now get this, it was the Mother's Day weekend, 1992, that she informed us that she had basically fourth stage terminal cancer and that she was going in the hospital. And I'm thinking, all I could think of, I was so angry. I was angry. I said, how could you have kept this from us for all this time, for 3 years? And so I had painted this picture of my mom being a narcissistic, you know, you name it. And she passed before I ever had a chance to heal any of that anger. And it wasn't until probably I did a vision quest with a bunch of other men. And one of the things that I knew I wanted to do was to kind of get some closure with my mother. And that vision quest happened in 2002 or something like that, maybe 10 years later, I guess it was. And I remember bringing along a photograph of my mom. And by the way, these vision quests, we're kept separate from each other, and we're basically encouraged to do a lot of meditating, no eating of food, but just drinking of water. So it's fasting during the entire time. And whatever journaling or meditating or whatever you want to do, that's fine. But, you know, and of course, we were encouraged not to do typical masculine thing of, you know, playing with ourselves. Anyway, that was discouraged strongly. So anyway, I did this little process. I built a little fire, and I just said in my heart, I want to forgive my mom. I want to release my energy about this. And I took her picture and I burned it in the fire. And I'll tell you, it took a little while, but the energy started to clear up. And I found that over the next couple of years, my image of my mother shifted entirely.
Mhm.
Now, had she changed? No, not at all. She had gone through her passage. She had gone into the spirit world. I was the one who changed. And it changed because I chose to forgive. And what is forgiveness but one of the greatest expressions of unconditional love? So I really applaud you for doing the work that you did and for having the presence of mind to be aware of what was going on for your mom, and also to be aware of what was going on for you. I hadn't reached that point in my growth yet that I was able to do that. So, two different journeys, similar results, but this is something that I want people to understand. No matter whether the person you love or maybe didn't love so much is alive or not, you can do the work to reconnect to the truth of who you are and forgive anybody, living or dead, in the world or not. And you can release yourself from any attachment to judgment or resentment or desires for justice or retribution or anything that you might have. If you can release that stuff, you can really give yourself a huge opening. Somebody used the word expansive at the beginning. I think it was you, Gail. I can't remember. And that's exactly what love is like. When you get to that place, it's like a big opening, and all of a sudden your heart just feels bigger and bigger. It's growing, it's expanding. So take advantage of these ideas. Take advantage of your own ability to love and trust that you already know how to do it.
Mine goes back to my mother as well, bless her. And she's still around. And it was accepting, obviously, what happened to me as a child, and the fact that it was an accident, it was circumstances. It certainly wasn't her fault that Gillian passed and died at 9 weeks old, but they were the things that really affected me. Now, when I'd had my wake-up call, the broken jaw, the 6 months of pain and sleepless nights, which meant I said cheerio to my marriage and sort of actually it's time to step into me. That was my step into me. And I asked to see a psychotherapist. And because I wished to understand the whys of why I'd been the way I had, why I'd let my life go the way I had, that people pleasing, etc., and ended up in 2 marriages I shouldn't have been in. And she was asking me about the story of what happened as a child, etc., etc., and it was just like, so well, have you talked to your mother and asked her information, etc.? And I remember I obviously had a conversation with my mother, and she did not understand. She just didn't understand where I was coming from at all. And I remember going back to the psychotherapist and saying, I tried talking to her and she doesn't understand. And what she said was, she doesn't have to. She loves you anyway. And it was just like, we don't have to understand each other. We really don't have to understand each other. But it's also really important to think, and this is something I've learned since, and sort of over the years with the work that I now do with people, it's, you don't have to understand why they are the way they are, but it is potentially good to sort of maybe even talk to them and say, how was your childhood? What went on in your childhood? And I've had a student just recently, and she said something it was to do with her father and the fact that he was never there. He was always working. And the second day I sort of said to her, you talked about your dad yesterday. I said, do you know much about his relationship with his father? And she said, his father died when he was 10. They struggled, and his determination was that and he worked really hard so that his family would not have to go through what they went through when he was a child. And I said, and he loves you all so much that he goes out to work and he isn't there when he probably would prefer to be for you, which gave her food for thought. Love for us from our parents, from our siblings, from our grandparents, comes from the place they are in, not the place we are in. It doesn't mean they don't love us. It just means that both my parents, my father's mother died when he was 5. My mother's father went off and spent 6, 7 years away for the whole period of how long the Second World War was, because of the job that he did. He wasn't in the army. His communication skills were far too important. He was out in Malta and Gibraltar for the whole period. So both my parents, for want of a better way of putting it, lost a parent. And their lives were totally disrupted. And so, and that affected their lives as adults. Their potential fight to keep things going, the way they were. What did their parents go through? What did their grandparents? And how many times do you see this written? That it's a generational thing. And there are so many people now saying, this stops with me. So we don't have to like the way things were. We don't have to condone the way things were. But maybe we can get an element of understanding of why things were the way they were.
Right.
And if that means that you feel you have to forgive, but maybe the important person, as I'm sure we have said before, to forgive is yourself, for allowing those things to affect you in the way that they did, for taking on other people's energies. And it's about allowing ourselves to let go of their energies so that we can cleanse our own energies, so that it really can stop with us. So that's the way I sort of tend to look at things. And I've tried that now. It's with my mum, getting her to talk about. I said, "What do you know? Did you ever have conversations with her grandmother, my great grandmother?" And getting her to talk. So again, this elder wisdom thing brought this very much up for me. How much do I know about my family and its history?
Right. Yeah. A lot of stuff there. I remember I used to say this stops with me until I saw it showing up on me when I was dealing with my kids. Then I stopped saying that and I said, I don't believe there's any way for me to say this stops with me anymore. I just have to do my best to heal my own wounds, bring myself into awareness of how I show up, and if I screw up, make appropriate amends with the people I care about. So I don't even say that stuff anymore. This stops with me because it might and it might not. One of the things that I have learned over the years is that sometimes I have to just surrender that stuff. I have to let it go. I have to release it and not hold myself hostage to showing up in a particular way. Because I guarantee you, well, I shared with you about that email that I got from a person who saw the posting for this very lesson. And he was quite angry about it. And I thought, isn't that interesting that a topic about solving the mystery of love could trigger a person this way? So I'm going to trigger people, like it or not. And I'm not going to pre-apologize for it. I'm going to say, this is me, and I do my best to live in the world consciously and with high integrity, and sometimes I screw up. And when I do my best to try and clean up the mess that I make. That's kind of how I deal with it now. I'm not going to apologize in advance. I'm not going to take responsibility for your feelings or how you react to what I say, especially when I know I'm not coming from a place of deliberately trying to hurt you. So we need to give ourselves permission, I believe, to be who we really are and not to apologize for it. Anyway, I'm sorry, I kind of took your space there, Scott. Why don't you, did you have something you wanted to say about the topic here?
You were just talking about boundaries, and Gail, you've brought that up. You know, holding your boundaries is one of those parts of self-love that in most of the people that I work with, they have problems with boundaries because they feel they're being selfish. How we were taught not to be selfish, that we had to give, we shouldn't have those boundaries, we shouldn't have those parameters. I tell people, well, think of them as speed bumps. You know, when people have to slow down coming towards you, and they have to do, you hear bump bump, and that just kind of gives you that sense of, okay, maybe they've crossed the line here. And if you don't like walls, then maybe just speed bumps. But it's those boundaries that we have. Anger has come up as a topic over the last 10 days or so. How it manifests, what it does, if it's good for you, if it's not good for you, if it's bad. Anger is protective. Anger is there to protect you. When you see something that is wrong, the anger comes up. And I was always taught, oh, don't say things if you're angry. Don't go from that place. And maybe I don't say all the words I want to say immediately come to mind when I'm really angry. And I take that breath. But it comes up and says, okay, there's something wrong here. And I want it to be taken care of. And so the breath that I take is so that I can come at it with compassion, with love, all the way that love shows itself, right? Through compassion, through caring, through acts of kindness. I do a lot of things with charities, and the charitable organizations I deal with, they always want to give me, they want to give you a letter, they want to give you a medal, they want to give you. It's like, I don't do this to be acknowledged. I don't do this for that kind of little trophy on the case. I do this because it makes me feel really good, and because I can. It's parts of me that I can give. So please allow me to do this. So, and that's the allowing part, I think, that I found, especially with family, that where love is most active. Because there are times, I don't know, we all have kids, or we all have nephews or nieces, and they do something really, really silly, and you bite your tongue. And as my daughters were raising their children, I had a bloody tongue, because they would do things after they'd ask, well, when this happens, what do you do? And so you tell them, and they would, of course, do the exact opposite. And you just bite your tongue, because, they're the parents now, not your kids still. And that's the hard part, but that's how love shows up. And sometimes it's allowing, sometimes it's having those boundaries, and sometimes it's just being.
Yeah, nice. Dale, you look like you're about to say something.
Oh, gosh, so much here, so much. I know I made some notes, and so I'm just revisiting this. Sarah, you were talking about understanding or not understanding, and I love what you said about they're not necessarily, love and understanding are not the same thing. You can absolutely love without understanding. And I think that we sometimes fall into this place where if you don't have one, you don't have the other. So speaking of children and being a mother, and I have children who are in their teens and tweens, and So a lot of like identity things are coming up, and I don't want to get too much into the details because I haven't gotten consent to do that to do that in a public way. But typical teen stuff, and a lot of it I understand. And there are parts that I don't understand. And knowing that I don't understand, but can still love on my kids anyway, is really like, I see other family members get tripped up in the, well, I don't get it. I don't understand. And then they just back away. Like they just don't even want to go there. And it's like, no, you're my kid. Like, I don't understand it. And there we may have some challenges in relating. But at the end of the day, I care so much about our relationship. It's not about you seeing it my way or you being right or any of that for me. It's about how can I learn more? How can I be more supportive? What do you need right now? And so I think, for me, I see that in my familial dynamics right now. And I think that, that plays out in friendships, that plays out in marriages, that plays out in romantic relationships of like, we feel like this desire of like, they have to see the world exactly the same way that I see it. Well, that's kind of boring, and they might see it vastly different. And that doesn't necessarily have to take away your love for that and can very much enhance your love for a person. So I love that you brought that up, Sarah. And then this piece about getting curious about people's histories. And I forgot exactly what you said, Sarah, but I had this experience where I read somewhere, I don't remember the source, but they were talking about how in dealing with, I think it was with children in particular who had behavioral issues, and how they were constantly bombarded with this, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? As a result of their behavior. And this woman was talking about change the question to what happened to you.
Mm.
And I did that with a different family member a couple years ago, and it completely shifted my dynamic with her. And it completely obliterated the entire narrative that I had about her. And I suspect the entire narrative that she had about me. And it was bizarre. It was a really strange experience to go from 20 years of it being this way and a blank canvas with that one question of what happened? What happened to you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, David, going back to your story of like making amends even after your mom passed, it is never too late to do any of this.
Right. And, well, for one thing, making amends doesn't mean that you have to necessarily fix anything.
Or forgiveness, right? Yeah.
Right. It's really about, when I talk about making amends, I'm talking about cleaning up the clutter that's in my own heart. And it's really not in my heart anyway, it's up here in my head, but it feels sometimes like it's down there in my heart. I want to say something about that. Nobody has a monopoly on stupid. There's the funny thing about kids, we try to call them adults by the time they're 18, but they're not. They haven't fully grown. They haven't fully developed their brains. And in fact, science now is starting to show that fully developed brains don't happen until well after 25, probably closer to 30 years old. And so here we are relying on these youngsters to make decisions about our lives when they really don't have it all together yet. So it might be the case that we as parents have to set boundaries for our kids for a long time after they're supposedly grown adults. And the boundary might be, okay, as long as you're going to continue doing this kind of behavior, and you're not going to listen to me, because I do believe I still have some wisdom here. If you're going to continue to choose to do that kind of stuff, I cannot stand by and let you do that. I'm going to have to distance myself.
Mm.
You know, you're not listening to me anymore. So that's what I'm going to do. And I'll just love you from over here. Okay. You can do that. This is part of the boundary setting options that we always have. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not going to be paying attention to you. I'm not going to be watching to see what's going on. And if I see you starting to show some maturity, then, you know, I'll reach out maybe again, or maybe you'll reach out to me. Who knows? It was a story about, you know, when I was 18, my dad was a total idiot. And I was amazed how smart he got by the time I was in my 20s. You know, somebody made that joke. I've heard that before. And I've lived it on the 18-year-old side. You know, I definitely have been there. So yeah, that's part of where I think love can really help us all to recognize that we're all in our own different stages of development. We're all in our own stages of awareness and consciousness. And it doesn't matter how old we are. You know, some old people are pretty stupid still, and some young people are really, really smart. They're very wise. So the age really is not the point. The point is we all have the opportunity to grow and develop and expand ourselves and raise our level of consciousness and do what we can to improve the world. But that really boils down to a choice, and it boils down to, as you said, Scott, setting good boundaries. So, and remembering also, I think it's important to say, boundaries are always temporary, even if they last an entire lifetime. They're just temporary. Okay. I can be thinking yes in this moment, and then the next moment I might say no. And then I might be a yes again a moment later. This is how our boundaries work. So be open to the shifting nature of your boundaries, but always be true to yourself. That's really what I think it has to come down to.
I'd like to add to your point about the wisdom. There's a saying, out of the mouths of babes.
Right.
And there are times when it's really important, especially with the younger children that are only just starting to learn to talk. They can really wake us adults up. But it's realizing that in our own teens, did we not think we knew everything and we knew better than our parents? And our parents couldn't possibly understand us because we just had that blank in our minds that our parents were the same age as us at one time. They went through it. Life maybe hadn't changed quite as much at that point in time as it has changed now with all this technology. But it's not about the actual experiences. It's about the feelings those experiences have given us. And the adults, the older people, the us, we may not understand exactly what you've gone through, but boy, do we get the feelings that those experiences have engendered in you. So and shouldn't we all therefore be thinking about actually, but maybe it's not parents that we should speak to. Maybe it's our grandparents that we should hopefully be speaking to. I know I can't anymore.
Neither can I.
That boat has sailed. And it's such a shame because I am sure they would have so much that they could share. So it's picking my mother's brains while she's still around. Otherwise, because, once my mum's gone, my sisters and I are the next generation. And so it's important that we are there for our kids, our grandkids, or in my case, my nieces and nephews and great nieces and nephews. Being open to be there, to support them, to listen to them, to be able to share our wisdom. And we're more likely to be able to do that in some cases than parents are able to do. You know, as an aunt, I've definitely got one niece that will come to me, which is great. It's lovely. But there's another 4 of them out there for nieces and nephews. But hopefully they will realize that there are adults within the family they can speak to, who, and the important thing is staying out of judgment of ourselves, judgment of each other, judgment of circumstances. You know, it's let go of that. And when we can stay out of judgment, then we are in that love, that caring, sort of. And love is vast in its
Right.
meaning, is it in its understanding or not, in its presence. And we do not have to think that love is only as big as we are. It transcends everything. It transcends this universe. It's not just a matter of sort of this world. It's really important.
Beautiful. Thank you. Scott, I know that you and Sarah both talked about Reiki and the use of Reiki to heal. I'd like to kind of shift us into the healing nature of love. And I wonder if you'd like to bring us onto that topic.
Oh my gosh. When I'm working with clients with Reiki and you feel into somebody, I do a body scan and look at their heart space and feel into their heart space. And when you really feel into it, you see how infinite, and I do mean infinite, that space is. That most of the barriers that we have are from here. But the capacity we have for love is unending. You know, there are a number of people I've questioned about, because I say that love is the most powerful force in our existence, and they just kind of poo-poo it. They don't see it. But what you people do in true love, forget the unconditional, because I don't do that anymore. I don't put unconditional there. Love is love. It may not take pure form. It may not take the form that we need it to be, but it's there always. Even in the darkest places, there is that compassion, that love. There's always that small, no matter where anyone is, there's always that small piece of themselves that they hold on to. That's hope, that's faith, trust, compassion, all of that. All of those are elements of love. And you can see that when you're working with people. It's not woo-woo. It's just being able to see that within people. And it's absolutely, in doing the work, it's amazing to be able to witness this and to try and take some of that shadow off, try to take some of that energy off that doesn't allow them to feel it, to see it, to understand it. And when they do, it changes lives in that respect. We don't do that. They do it. We just bring the energy to them. We're not healing anything. We're allowing the energy in so that they can do that. Their body heals themselves. They heal themselves. But it's absolutely amazing to see that kind of transformation.
Yeah, right. Beautiful. I think of healing as a process leading me back to wholeness. So the only reason that I need to heal is because something has gotten fractured off of me somehow, and it's almost always because of my ego mind getting in the way. And so when I can bring my focus from here down into my heart space, as you say, then I can reconnect to that wholeness, and that's kind of where healing comes from. Gail, what do you do to help people heal with the power of love?
Yeah, I would say that, I'm really committed to asking better questions. I'm committed to holding a firm space of love, an expansive space of love when I'm working with clients. Really listening, validating. Um, yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to always name it, but I know that there's something in my energy. I've had energy readers and energy workers say, like, you've got healer energy. So I know that there are these things about me where people feel safe. They trust me. I can be talking about the most mundane thing and they'll say, wow, I just feel so much better after being with you. And I didn't always value that or recognize that. And I'm so glad that I've been able to work with people to help me understand what that's all about and what a responsibility that really is. I'm getting a little choked up. I mean, it's truly an honor. And I've been with people who do that. And so I know how healing that has been for me. I do, I don't know if it's necessarily see energy, but when I work with clients, with their permission, I tap into their energy. I'm often brought to different chakras and energy blockages within their energetic body. I've had clients go through visualizations with me and literally would receive images of having heart walls, like literally having walls around their heart. And it's a beautiful, I never know what's going to come up. I have to completely surrender. I don't know how it works. I just have to trust. And like Scott, it's so beautiful to have a client become, like, gain that awareness, and then also have to recognize that they have the power to choose, like, what they want to do with that energy. It's not always about, like, I just want to get rid of this, right? Like, that's the ego mind too, like that. Maybe that wall is there for a reason. Maybe it needs to be loved up. Particular client I'm thinking of, she was like, oh my gosh, that's not even my wall. And she pushed it away, so it's really being present, with clients and guiding them, like you, Scott. Like, I'm trusting the information flowing through me and guiding them on that journey, but they're doing the work.
It's funny, as you were speaking and you talked about the wall around the heart, I had immediately the song by Sting came into my mind. I have a fortress around my heart. I can't remember the proper title of the song, but it's a great song.
It is.
What about you, Sarah? I know that you do Reiki as well. Talk a little bit about how you help people connect to their healing power.
There's the Reiki energy. Yes, there is. There's also the metamorphic technique. I think the most powerful thing that I bring is the sound, the toning, the working with the sound, but mainly working with their name. And just people's expression, the comments that they make afterwards, about how that made them feel. Because for me, that love and that energy, and I am going to use the word unconditional because so many people still require that term to be used. And for me, the energy when I'm toning their name is pure unconditional love, and a love that is totally honoring and acknowledging the whole of who they are, every aspect of who they are. And although they might not put it into those words, the words that people use for that is the feeling that they get. And sometimes it's just like, the feeling's amazing, but I can't put it into words. And so it's And I love it. But I've had a conversation with somebody today, and putting it bluntly, I think I was pretty brutally honest with them. And it's somebody I'd never met before. And we were having a conversation. But then I said to her, I said, I know I've been blunt with you, but I have that feeling that blunt is all that is going to work to support you. And she said, you're totally right.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that energy of love, and that was just a conversation. It was an hour and 3/4 in the end. But it was what it was. But with your permission, I know we've hit time, and that's fine because your clocks have changed and ours haven't. Would you like me to finish with a light language, a soul wisdom message?
Okay, well, I will have some closing words to say, but please go right ahead. Yep.
Okay. As I've said before, I have no idea what I'm saying. I can't translate it for you, but my suggestion is close your eyes and just allow the energies of these words to flow over you. Ko chan tahan tahehi, naktatahana eshtiniama, pohanata eki, yet chinakateki amateeta. Yoin titi anaka akadarana to amanachi, haratoma shi no koma akarane, iptakatakahaha Shean taranake papai, nutritiona matukumu oyakata anie, shanaka I ach tanake, noe chenaka tamaneka, behanatara natushianaka, tirakachi, motarakateache, nahas tanake, chimanakate. Namaste.
Well, thank you, Sarah, for that. And thank you, everybody, for watching the live or watching the recording, whatever has been your choice for today. I just want to remind you that ultimately the mystery of love is a testament to the depth and richness of the human experience. So I invite you to practice just opening yourself to love. Try saying out loud in front of your mirror, perhaps, or even during a meditation, I am love. Just try it, see what happens, and repeat that over and over. Notice how you feel when you say it. And then maybe you can bring that full expression of love more deeply into the world. And all of that is going to help heal everybody and everything and the entire planet. So thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us at Soul Empowerment for episode 51. And remember, you can catch the recording of this and every other episode on my website at yourlifemasterycoach.com. So again, thank you all for being here, and we'll see you next time on Soul Empowerment. Bye-bye.